Hello everyone, it's Elizabeth and I'm here in my art loft, and I had a request to show the paper that I made in the last video. I made a paper making video where I did the dip method, in which you have a vat full of water and paper pulp, and then you dip a mold and deckle down into it and come up with a sheet of paper. This is the piece of paper that I came up with from that result. And it is not totally consistent, and that is because, well, I didn't have probably enough paper pulp in there to make a consistent sheet of paper, plus my water level was not very low, so therefore in dipping, if you had the water level 4 inches deep and you're dipping a mold that's 2 inches deep, then you don't have a lot of wiggle room to get that slurry to come up over your deckle and give you a good sheet of paper. Later before that I did some that were a little bit thicker. I'll show you those also. But this could be very interesting if you were doing something decorative and wanted a thin sheet, so you can even see my hand through that, where the texture of the paper, the fibers of the paper are not too dense, and you can actually see color through there. Maybe if I get this little black piece of paper I have over here, you can see it better because, contrast, black is good contrast. So there you can see where that shows like a little cloud-like. And I have that throughout the paper. This paper is very thin, and I would think that it would be used for decorative purposes, although you could try to use it as pages in a journal or something, fold it in half and sew it in like normal. I'm not saying that it would last forever. Depends on how rough the person using the journal would be. But it is very flat. The mesh that is on the mold that I used is a pretty dense mesh, so you really don't see the grid of it. Excuse me. I had some flecks of paper in here, plus I had some just linter sheets in the vat at the time. I had a little bit of botanicals, which whenever you have a botanical in your paper, it tends to bleed just slightly around it. You can see that's a little piece there too. And that was the first sheet that I made, the one that I made with the dip method. Now the mold I had is 8.5 by 11, and let's see what the paper comes out, because sometimes there's a bit of shrinkage, and that one is 8.5. And it is 11 across, so we did well on that one. Excuse me. The second sheet of paper I made with the pour method, and I didn't have my correct mesh to use on top of the grate, between the deckle and the grate, and so I used just a window screen piece. And I think you can see, if I hold it really steady, you can probably see the texture that it leaves on that paper. You can see kind of a grid pattern. It's not like it's obnoxious or anything like that, but it is there. And if you didn't want that look to it, there are two things you can do. One, you can use the proper mold, or the other is, after it's finished, you can just take your fingernail and rub it out. You can take your fingernail and make that almost smooth. And I don't know if you can see the difference in this little bit right here and the part that's next to it. So you do have options. This one was made with with a book page. No, I think I had some linter. No, I had some other pieces of paper, and then the big orange thing. The orange parts were the scrapbooking paper that I had used. It's like just colored cardstock or colored paper that you can buy from anywhere. I'm using my fingernail again. You can use a bone folder, but the bone folder is not as gentle as your fingernail, so I recommend the fingernail. But, whatever you need to use to make that as smooth as you want it to feel. Okay, some other paper that I made that same day. There's the one I made with the dip method, and I made a few other ones with the dip method before that one. And the first one that I made with the dip method is, as you can see, you can't see my hand through it, except over here in this corner where I didn't do so well at dipping things evenly, but you cannot see my hand through it, and that's thicker. And the reason that is because when you're doing the dip method, if you don't put new pulp in to the vat every time, then each sheet is basically going to be thinner than the previous sheet, because if you think of a solution of something and you're taking stuff out of that solution, i.e. the paper pulp, then you're going to have less in that solution each time, so your percentage is going to go down each time, and therefore you're going to get a thinner sheet of paper each time because you have less pulp in the total vat. The vat total amount of pulp is less after you've taken out some of the pulp and made one sheet of paper. Here's another sheet that I had made before that. It has thick and thin parts. Again, I was not doing very well at getting that even. I have done that dipped paper that I have gotten pretty consistent, and to do that you have to, each time you take out paper pulp, you have to put in another amount of paper pulp that equals virtually the amount that you took out. It's really hard to judge, so I prefer the pour method because it's a lot easier to get a consistent set of sheets of paper if that's if that's what you want it to do. Excuse me. Okay, so this sheet was first taken out in the dip method. This one was second, and this one was third. And you can actually see the difference in those two. This one is thicker than this one is. So there were 3 that I did with the dip method. Now, I had done 2 of them earlier than the video that I showed you. So they were taken out, you know, the pulp was taken out a lot earlier than that. Here are a few of the other ones that I did. I did some with the pour method that I did not use enough paper in. I'll leave that down there for the contrast. This one you can see that the whole corner's missing. And then next to the corner that's missing, there's, you know, like cloud-like stuff. But the rest of it's kind of pretty. And then this is another one that I used too little paper to do. And you can see that it has a lot of interesting texture to it, but you wouldn't probably want to use that as a sheet, as a book page. Why am I having coughing issues today? Not a good thing. Okay, so here's the one that I did with the pour method, and it's virtually the same as this, except I did not chop up the white pieces of paper enough, so therefore we get a lot of the book pages, and you can actually read the word with right there, because, you know, it was a book page, and whatever it was had the word with in it. You'll notice on handmade paper, whenever you're doing, you know, dipping it with a mold or pouring into a mold, there will be a difference in one side of the paper and the other. And the reason is that as you pick up that mold, the paper is settling down into the mold, and you're getting the bigger pieces at the bottom. And this is the side that would have been toward the mold, and this is the side that would have been up as we were lifting it out of the solution. On this one, this is the side that would have been toward the mold, and this is the side that would have been up as we are lifting it out of the solution. And you can see that there's a difference in the amount of little bits that you can see in each one. Okay, another thing that you can do, which I didn't show in my demonstration on YouTube, is you can take a sheet of paper that you mold, that you hand make paper, and you can put it on a mold of some sort, on a piece of lace. I have used lace. I have used pine. I have a pine tree that I have had branches off of that had fallen off the pine tree. And I laid those down and came up with a design on it. This particular one is from this mold, and you can see the various like this part right here went into that area right there, and then you can see the difference, like these two pieces here, those two pieces there. This swirl here was that swirl there. So of course it gives you the opposite look to it when you pick it up off of that sheet, off of that mold, or off of the lace or whatever you've used. And you can see that on the back side you get a lot lighter impression. So you might want to use the back side sometime instead of the front side, just to have that more ethereal effect with it. And these little pink parts are from having botanicals in there. This little green part here is a part of a dollar bill that had been meshed up. I didn't do it. There was some stuff that you could buy that had different bits to put in handmade paper. Okay, another thing that I did, I made some paper. There's another piece. Now, when I was cleaning out my vat and emptying out my water, which you should really empty your water outside in the grass, and your little pieces of paper will fly away, or the birds and bees will get it, take it and use it in their nest. If you must, you can strain all your paper and put it down the commode. I do not recommend that. I do that, but I do not recommend that, because you take the chance of filling up your commode, and making it stopped up. You don't want to have to call a plumber, because then that makes the price per sheet of your paper extremely high. This piece was when I was cleaning it out. I have a strainer that I put down and catch the biggest bits of paper, and you can see that there was a considerable amount of paper pulp in the water at the time. I caught this in the strainer, and then I just dumped it out on my mold that is that shape. And then I blotted it I put the screen over it and blotted out the water from it with my sponge. This piece of paper I made from blue jeans. And the colored bits are from the botanicals that were in the water at the time, or maybe I stuck them in with this. But blue jean material you can push down into a felt-like stuff. If you use only blue jeans, then you get a very, very soft piece of paper. And I call it paper, but it's really as much felt as it is paper. Easily torn, easily damaged, because it's just basically the fibers of the blue jeans that I had actually cut them into about 1/2 inch lengths, and then I just and cut them into, you can see the lengths of the fibers that are there. So I cut them into that small. And then when I put it into the slurry, use my blender to blend it up, it takes those pieces and makes them come apart into the individual fibers. And so you have your individual fibers all laid down here. And the way that it turns into an actual sheet of paper instead of being all these little fibers just hanging around is that the water, and it opens up the fibers just a little bit so they intermesh a little bit. And you get a sheet of paper that isn't really paper so much as it is kind of felt. But it's fun to play with, and if you're doing decorative things, it can be a lot of fun to use for some kind of decorative application. I made that was on a smaller mold, and I made some other ones. Here's one that had, you can see the difference in the front and the back very vividly there. This one had some of the chopped up dollar bill. Someone says that you can go to the like the Treasury or something, and get bags of chopped up dollar bills. I don't think it would be worth your time to try to put them back together, but to use them in a piece of paper like this is a lot of fun. This one had a paper page, a page from a book, and that's what the little words are in there. And then I also put in some little pieces. Now this is just your normal cardstock stuff, you know, like you would have for making cards and or scrapbooking. And I chopped it into these actual sizes. And the reason that they show here in the exact sizes that I chopped them into is because I did not, I mushed up the paper pulp in the blender for a while and got basically the background stuff. And then I put these in and just gave it a good one pulse to get them to disperse around into that slurry. So I didn't actually blend them. The blender bars, the blender blades didn't actually, you know, hit them enough to break them up. So that's why they look like they're whole little bits of paper. And that one looks basically the same on both sides, mostly. Okay, then I made a piece with some linter paper, and I wasn't sure how much to put in because linter paper is, it's kind of mushed up. It's like pulp that's ready to use, but it's really lightweight. It's sort of like fiberfill, except that it's paper stuff rather than whatever fiberfill is made out of. And I don't think that's paper stuff. And so when I put it in and got this out of the mold, it actually, there was a piece that was that fell off the other piece, and so I put it back on here so you can see that there's straight here and there's straight here, and of course those don't match because this one I put it a diagonal when I put it back on. But again, this is very, very thin, very, very fragile, and if you wanted to use that for decorative purposes, it would be a lot of fun. But as far as a paper to write on or something like that, you could write on the thicker parts, but there are some really thin parts, as you can see there, that little crack and everything. It would be difficult to do. Okay, so then the next day, I decided I was going to make some consistent sheets of paper. And I started making some that look like this. And what I did here is I took the book that I was ripping up, and took 4 sheets of that paper. Now, 4 sheets, the sheets of paper were 1/2 the size of this. So I took 4 sheets so that I'd have a thick enough sheet of paper. I wouldn't have to worry about having the thin holes. And if you look at this through the light, you'll see that there are thicknesses and thin places, but not to the degree that that last piece of paper was. So I made 5 sheets of paper to start with, and the reason they look a little wrinkly and not totally flat, this one is pretty much flat, but it's a little bit not flat, but it's mostly flat, is because it's been really humid here. And anytime you have handmade paper, the humidity in the area, in your area, will affect the way that it works, the way that it happens. And this one's not part of the set, I believe, because it has bigger sheets of paper, and it's not the book pages. You can tell because there's no writing on it, no writing on the pages. But these other 4 I did do with the same thing. So what I did was to use 4 sheets of 4 pages from the book, and then I blended them up with some additional colorant, in essence. A piece of the paper that was a piece of scrapbooking paper, probably about this much of the scrapbooking paper, to make a tint to it. Now that's what these were. This one had a little bit more, so it made it a little bit darker. So I was trying to make them kind of in a rainbow color. So I started with the pink and then went, and this is supposed to be orange, and these bits are actually orange, but it looks pink because, well, your eyeball perceives it as pink, unless you have something distinctive next to it to make it look orange. Then this one had I didn't blend it quite as long, so you see more of the writing on the paper. This one was yellow, of course, and this one's slightly green. So those were the beginnings of having additional papers and a more consistent run. So it's about twice as thick as a normal sheet of paper because I wanted them to be a good quality. It's almost like cardstock because I used 4 sheets. If I had used 2 sheets, it would have been really thin and really difficult to manage keeping it totally even. But with the 4 sheets, it works perfectly. I made some more the next day, which are these. I have a red one. Well, that's the orange again. I have a blue one, and this blue really, I love that color. Turned out pretty. This one's purpley, although it may look blue to you. Sometimes the camera doesn't do it as well. This one's green. I did another blue one because I like that so much. This is a different green. You can see that that's not quite the same as that one is. And I have a light blue, which is more of a blue instead of the blue-green like that is. And then I have a light blue-green. So those are the papers I've been making. I do have some more in the press right now trying to dry. What I have is the blotters between them, and I have a piece of glass and some weight on top, and that's how I dry them. And tonight I will take out the blotters and put new ones in, and then tomorrow they should be dry because it's quit raining. But anytime it's raining, it's going to make your papers dry, take longer to dry. And they will get a little bit more moisture back into them and warp slightly. You see that that's not totally flat against the other ones. Anyway, that's paper making and what my results were. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, share. Yeah, share with your friends so that I can get some more subscribers. I'm waiting till I get to 400 to be able to do a giveaway. And we'll see what the giveaway is. I don't know. If you have suggestions on that, you can suggest it. And until then, please have a good day, good night, whatever time it is for you. And enjoy. Bye now.